Cole was not supposed to be there. That was the first thought I had when Mason pulled his SUV into the gravel driveway of the cabin, and I saw Cole Bennett standing beneath the porch light with a duffel bag at his feet. We were about 70 miles from Portland, surrounded by tall pines, cold mountain air, and enough silence to make every unexpected detail feel important. I thought Cole had a photography job this weekend, I said. Noah glanced at me from the passenger seat. He did. From the back, Jake leaned between our seats with the kind of grin that usually meant trouble. He canceled it. I turned around. Why? Jake only shrugged. Ask him. Before I could, Cole noticed our arrival. Even from 20 feet away, I recognized the calm expression that had made him impossible for me to read for almost 2 years. He was 30, 3 years older than me, with dark brown hair, blue eyes, and the irritating ability to look completely put together after a long drive into the mountains. I had spent nearly 2 years pretending I did not have feelings for him. Apparently, the universe had decided I deserved a more difficult weekend. Ethan, Cole said when I stepped out. Just my name, but somehow my heart treated it like breaking news. Cole, I thought you were working. His eyes flicked briefly toward Noah before returning to me. Plans changed. What happened? I decided this was more important. Before I could ask what that meant, Mason opened the cabin door and announced that anyone who wanted a decent bedroom needed to move fast. The cabin was beautiful in the rustic way rental listings always promised. Cedar walls, a stone fireplace, enormous windows, and a deck facing miles of forest. There was only one problem. 3 bedrooms. Jake said. Mason looked guilty. The listing was misleading. 10 minutes later, Jake and Noah had claimed the room with 2 beds, and Mason took the smallest room because he had booked the place. That left one room upstairs. For Cole and me. I stood in the doorway staring at 2 twin beds separated by a nightstand. This is fine, I said. Cole placed his bag beside the bed nearest the window. You sound like someone trying to convince himself. I am flexible. You alphabetize your spice rack. I looked at him. How do you know that? Cole paused for half a second. Noah mentioned it. Maybe he had. Still, something about Cole's expression made me wonder. Downstairs, Jake called for help unloading groceries. I turned to leave, but Cole spoke behind me. Ethan, I looked back. If sharing the room makes you uncomfortable, I can sleep on the couch. His voice was careful, almost too careful. That was the problem with Cole. Around everyone else, he was relaxed. Around me, there was always this invisible line neither of us crossed. It is fine, I said. We are adults. Right? He smiled slightly. Adults. Later, while everyone argued over dinner, I caught Noah watching Cole across the kitchen. Then Noah looked at me and immediately looked away. Jake noticed too and smiled into his drink. I had known these guys long enough to recognize when something was being kept from me. I just had no idea what. That night, as I unpacked beside Cole in a cabin miles from home, one question refused to leave me alone. What could possibly have been important enough for Cole Bennett to cancel a paid photography job just to spend the weekend here? I should have been thinking about the fact that I was sharing a room with Cole for an entire weekend. Instead, I kept thinking about one sentence. I decided this was more important. By the time everyone finished dinner, Jake had claimed the couch beside the fireplace. Mason was searching for a deck of cards, and Noah was making coffee even though it was almost 9. Cole helped me carry the dishes into the kitchen without being asked. That should not have meant anything. With Cole, small things had an annoying way of feeling significant. You can leave those, I said. I have them. There are 5 of us. He picked up a dish towel. You do not have to clean for 4 grown men. Mason cooked. Mason heated chili. From the living room, Mason called, I can't hear you. Cole smiled, and I almost forgot why being around him made me nervous. Almost. Upstairs later, I discovered a second problem with our room. It was warm. Uncomfortably warm. I crossed to the window, but before I touched it, Cole reached past the curtain and opened it about 3 inches. Cold mountain air slipped inside. Better? He asked. I stared at him. How did you know? Know what? That I sleep with the window cracked. Cole hesitated. You mentioned it once. When? I do not remember. You remember that I said it, but not when I said it. His mouth curved slightly. Apparently. I sat on my bed. You also knew about my spice rack. That is harder to forget. Noah told you that. Right? Something about the way he said it made me suspicious. Cole began unpacking his camera equipment on the desk, carefully checking batteries and memory cards. I watched him longer than I meant to. Are you planning to work while we are here? No, just habit. You canceled a job and still brought 3 cameras. 2 cameras. He lifted a smaller black case. That is a lens. I am a graphic designer, not a photographer. You say that like graphic designers are helpless around technology. We specialize in pretending we understand technology until the client leaves. Cole laughed. It was easy for a few minutes. Too easy. That was what confused me most. For almost 2 years, I had believed Cole kept a careful distance because he sensed my feelings and did not return them. Yet here, without the rest of the group filling every silence, he seemed different. Relaxed. Attentive. Familiar in ways I could not explain. I reached for the lamp beside my bed. I usually read for a while before sleeping. Does the light bother you? No. Cole opened his bag and pulled out a sleep mask. I brought this because I knew you would read. I froze. You knew? He looked down at the mask as if realizing what he had admitted. You always read on trips. We have taken one trip together. Lake Tahoe. That was 18 months ago. Cole met my eyes. I remember. The room became strangely quiet. Outside, wind moved through the pines. Downstairs, Jake laughed loudly at something Mason said. I looked at Cole, then at the open window, the sleep mask, and the man who apparently remembered habits I barely remembered revealing. Maybe I had been wrong about him keeping his distance. Or maybe there was another explanation I had not considered. Either way, by the time I turned off my lamp, I had a new question keeping me awake. Why had Cole Bennett been paying such close attention to me? By breakfast, I had convinced myself that Cole remembering a few details meant nothing. That theory lasted approximately 11 minutes. Mason made pancakes while Jake scrambled eggs and Noah stood at the counter pretending his first cup of coffee had not turned him into a functioning person yet. I reached for the carton of milk, but Cole slid a mug toward me first. Coffee before food, he said. I looked inside. 1 splash of cream. No sugar. Exactly right. Did Noah tell you this too? Cole paused with his own mug halfway to his mouth. Across the kitchen, Noah suddenly became very interested in the refrigerator. Maybe, Cole said. That is becoming a suspiciously useful answer. Jake made a choking sound that might have been a laugh. Cole looked at him. Jake immediately focused on his eggs. I stared around the kitchen. What? Nothing, Noah said too quickly. Nobody said anything, Mason added, which was not remotely reassuring. After breakfast, we drove to a nearby trail for an easy hike through the forest. The morning was cool and bright, with sunlight cutting between the pines and patches of old snow still visible higher on Mount Hood. Cole carried one of his cameras, stopping occasionally to photograph the trees, the trail, or Jake making ridiculous poses beside trail markers. I tried not to notice how often Cole ended up walking beside me. You are quiet, he said. I am hiking. Those activities can happen simultaneously with conversation. Not when Mason chooses a trail that apparently goes uphill forever. From 20 feet ahead, Mason called back. It is 3 miles. 3 miles can contain a lot of uphill. Cole laughed and offered me his water bottle when I discovered mine was nearly empty. I declined because accepting it somehow felt more intimate than sharing a bedroom, which made absolutely no sense. At the overlook, the 5 of us stopped for lunch. Jake sat beside me and immediately started asking whether I was dating. Anyone? No, I said. Still, thank you for making it sound like a medical condition. I am just saying you could meet someone if you actually tried. I meet people. Your grocery delivery driver does not count. Noah laughed. Mason joined in. Cole did not. He had been sitting across from me, but the moment Jake mentioned dating apps, Cole stood and walked toward the overlook with his camera. I watched him go. Did I say something? Jake asked with exaggerated innocence. Noah gave him a warning look. I caught it. Okay, what is happening? 3 faces turned toward me. Nothing, Mason said. You all keep saying that. Because nothing is happening, Noah replied. Jake smiled. Yet. Jake. Noah's voice sharpened. Jake raised both hands. I did not say anything. I looked toward Cole again. He stood alone near the railing, staring through his camera at the mountains. Later, back at the cabin, the strange behavior continued. Cole remembered which beer I liked. Mason nearly smiled when he handed it to me. Jake suggested we play cards and deliberately left the chair beside Cole empty. Noah kicked him under the table. I saw that too. By dinner, I was no longer wondering whether I was imagining things. Something was happening around me, and apparently everyone had received the information except me. When Cole stepped outside to bring in firewood, Jake watched him through the window, then glanced at me with the same knowing expression he had worn since we arrived. Seriously, I said. What do you know? Jake opened his mouth. Noah interrupted immediately. Do not. The room went silent. I looked from Noah to Mason and finally back toward the window, where Cole was returning through the cold evening air. Whatever secret had followed us into this cabin, I was beginning to realize something that made my stomach tighten. Somehow, it was about Cole and me. At 1:13 in the morning, I gave up pretending I was going to fall asleep. Cole was breathing quietly in the other bed, or at least I thought he was, so I slipped downstairs, pulled on my jacket, and stepped onto the covered porch. The temperature had dropped into the low 40s, and the forest beyond the cabin was almost completely dark. I had been outside for less than a minute when the door opened behind me. Could not sleep? Cole asked. I turned. Apparently neither could you. He stepped beside me, carrying 2 mugs. Tea. I accepted one. Let me guess. You remembered I do not drink coffee after dinner. Cole looked almost embarrassed. You mentioned it once. I laughed softly. Of course I did. For a while, we stood without speaking. There was no Jake making jokes, no Noah changing subjects, no Mason finding something convenient to do whenever the conversation became interesting. Just Cole and me and the sound of wind moving through the pines. Can I ask you something? He said. That depends. Why do you always leave when I sit next to you? I nearly dropped my tea. I do not. Cole gave me a look. Ethan, I do not always leave. At Noah's birthday, you changed seats. At Jake's barbecue, you volunteered to help in the kitchen the second I sat beside you. Last month, at Mason's place, you spent 20 minutes talking to his neighbor about lawn care. He had strong opinions. You live in an apartment. I stared into my mug because looking at Cole suddenly felt dangerous. Maybe you make me nervous. The words escaped before I could stop them. Cole became very still. Why? There were several answers I could have given him. None felt safe. You are difficult to read. So are you. I am extremely readable. Not to me. That surprised me enough to look up. Cole was watching me with an expression I had never seen before, uncertain rather than calm. I always thought you wanted space from me, I said. Why would you think that? Because you act differently around me. So do you? Because I thought you did not want me around. Cole exhaled and looked toward the trees. We might be worse at this than I realized. Worse at what? He did not answer immediately. Instead, he asked, Are you seeing anyone? My pulse jumped. No. Talking to anyone? No. Why do you care? That stopped him. Cole lowered his mug, and for a few seconds I thought he might finally say whatever everyone else seemed to know. I guess I thought I had more time, he said. Quietly. More time for what? His eyes met mine, and something passed across his face before he hid it. Nothing. Forget I said that. That is not how conversations work. It is late. Cole. He rubbed one hand over the back of his neck. I should not have asked. You asked whether I was dating someone, then said you thought you had more time. I am going to need more than that. The porch door opened before he could respond. Noah appeared in sweatpants, blinking at us. There you are. Jake is snoring like construction equipment, and I am considering sleeping in the car. Cole stepped away from the railing. Whatever moment had existed between us disappeared. Good luck with that, he said, then went inside. Noah watched him leave before looking at me. What happened? I stared at the closed door. I have absolutely no idea. But that was not completely true. For the first time in 2 years, I was beginning to suspect Cole had not been keeping his distance because he felt nothing. And one sentence followed me upstairs long after the porch went quiet. He thought he had more time. The next morning, Cole behaved as if our conversation on the porch had never happened, which would have been easier to accept if I could stop hearing his words in my head. I thought I had more time. More time for what? Breakfast offered no answers. Cole talked with Mason about the weather, argued with Jake about the correct way to make French toast, and asked Noah whether the trail near Trillium Lake would be muddy after the overnight drizzle. With me, he was polite and careful. Too careful. By 10, the clouds had lifted enough for us to take another short hike. Cole carried his camera again, and this time I started paying attention to where he pointed it. He photographed Jake balancing on a fallen log. He captured Mason laughing when Noah nearly stepped into a puddle. He took wide shots of the forest and Mount Hood appearing between the clouds. But every few minutes, I caught the lens turning toward me. Do I have something on my face? I asked after the third time. Cole lowered the camera. No. Then why do you keep photographing me? I am photographing everyone. Jake walked past us and muttered, Sure you are. Cole gave him a warning look. Jake immediately increased his pace. Back at the cabin that afternoon, rain began tapping against the windows again. Cole set his camera bag on the dining table and went upstairs to change out of his damp jacket. I was helping Mason clear snacks when Cole called from above. Ethan, can you grab a fresh battery from my bag? Which pocket? Front compartment. I opened the bag and found enough equipment to make me afraid of touching anything. Batteries filled one section, memory cards another. As I searched, a thick paper envelope slipped from the front compartment and landed on the floor. Several photographs slid halfway out. I bent to return them, then stopped. The first photograph was me. I was standing outside a coffee shop in Portland, laughing at something beyond the frame. I remembered the day. Noah had organized brunch almost a year earlier. Beneath that photograph was another. Me sitting on Mason's balcony with a book. Another showed me asleep against the passenger window during our Lake Tahoe road trip. Another captured me at Jake's birthday party, smiling while holding a ridiculous paper hat Jake had insisted everyone wear. I sat back on my heels. None of the photographs showed private moments. They had all been taken during group gatherings where Cole had his camera. That was not what unsettled me. What unsettled me was that he had printed them, kept them. There were photographs spanning nearly 2 years, and somehow I was always the subject. I heard footsteps on the stairs and quickly gathered the pictures, but one remained in my hand when Cole entered the room. He stopped. His expression changed instantly. Ethan. I held up the photograph from the coffee shop. What is this? For once, Cole had no calm answer ready. His eyes moved from the picture to the open camera bag. You were looking for a battery. The envelope fell out. Right. Cole, why do you have all these photographs of me? Noah appeared in the kitchen doorway, saw the photograph, and immediately stopped walking. Behind him, Jake whispered something I could not hear. Cole glanced toward them, then back at me. It is complicated. Everyone keeps acting like there is something I do not know. I placed the photograph carefully on the table. Is this it? Cole looked at the collection of images, his expression caught somewhere between embarrassment and resignation. Then Noah quietly said, No. I turned toward him. No. Noah realized too late what he had admitted. Jake closed his eyes. Mason became completely silent. My stomach tightened. I looked from the photographs to Cole and then to my 4 friends. If this is not the secret, I said, then what is? For several seconds, nobody answered me. Rain tapped steadily against the cabin windows while the photographs remained scattered across the table between us. Noah looked as though he wanted to disappear. Jake suddenly found the floor fascinating. Mason folded his arms and stared at Cole, apparently deciding this was no longer his problem to solve. Someone needs to start talking, I said. Cole stepped closer to the table. They are my photographs, Ethan. This is my conversation. Then have it. His eyes met mine, but before he could speak, Jake cleared his throat. Maybe we should give them some space. No, I said. Nobody is leaving until somebody explains why 4 people apparently know something about my life that I do not. Noah sighed. I should not have said anything. That is becoming a theme. Cole looked at him. Noah. There was no anger in his voice, only warning. Noah nodded and stopped. I picked up one of the photographs. It showed me reading on Mason's balcony while everyone else was somewhere outside the frame. Fine. Start with these. Cole rubbed the back of his neck. I take pictures of people I care about. You have 20 pictures of me in one envelope. Jake quietly said, More than 20. Cole closed his eyes. Thank you, Jake. Sorry. I looked at Cole. Why? Because I like photographing you. That is not an explanation. I know. Before he could continue, Mason's phone chimed with a weather alert. He checked it and glanced toward the windows. Rain is getting heavier. We are probably staying here this afternoon. Nobody responded. The weather was the least interesting thing in the room. Cole gathered the photographs slowly. Can we talk later? You keep saying later. Because there are things I need to explain properly. Then explain them properly now. Cole looked almost ready to answer, but Noah spoke first. Ethan, trust me. Give him a little time. I turned toward my best friend. You know too. His expression answered before his mouth did. How long? A while. And Jake? Jake raised one hand reluctantly. A while. Mason, Mason nodded. Not as long. I laughed once, mostly from disbelief. Fantastic. Apparently, I am the only person at this cabin who missed the meeting. I walked into the kitchen, and Noah followed me. Ethan. What? Do not assume the worst. I do not even know what I am supposed to assume. I lowered my voice. Are the photographs the secret? Noah hesitated. No. Then what is? Cole needs to tell you. Why? Noah glanced toward the living room where Cole stood by the table. Because it is his life. Something about that answer changed the shape of my confusion. His life. Noah immediately realized he had said too much. Forget that. Absolutely not. I searched his face. Is Cole moving? Noah remained silent. Is he leaving Portland? Still nothing. My stomach tightened. Suddenly, the porch conversation returned with perfect clarity. I thought I had more time. He is leaving, I whispered. Noah looked away. That was enough. Where? Ethan, please. Before I could push further, Cole appeared in the kitchen doorway. His expression told me he had heard enough. Noah, he said quietly, I have this. Noah nodded and walked back toward the others. Cole and I were alone except for the sound of rain against the roof. I looked at him. You are leaving Portland. He did not deny it. There is an opportunity one have been considering. Where? Cole took a slow breath. Alaska. The word landed harder than it should have. For how long? 6 months. I stared at him, suddenly understanding why he had asked whether I was seeing anyone and why he thought he had more time. But one question still remained. I glanced toward the photographs on the table, then back at him. What does any of that have to do with me? Cole held my gaze for a long moment. Everything. Everything. I repeated. Cole looked toward the living room, where the others had suddenly become very committed to giving us privacy. Then he nodded toward the back door. Can we talk somewhere without an audience? The covered deck was only a few steps away, protected from the rain but surrounded by the steady sound of water falling through the trees. Cole stood beside the railing while I waited for an explanation that suddenly felt much bigger than a photography job. The Alaska offer came 3 weeks ago, he said. A conservation organization hired a team to document remote communities and landscapes. 6 months. Good work. The kind of assignment I have wanted for years. Then you should take it. Cole blinked. You have not heard the rest. You said it is something you have wanted for years. It is. So why are we standing here talking like Alaska is a problem? He looked down at his hands. Because when I received the offer, the first person I thought about was you. My chest tightened. Cole continued before I could interrupt. I kept telling myself that made no sense. You and I are friends. Barely, sometimes, because every time I try to get closer, you seem to find the nearest exit. We covered that last night. I know. That conversation made this harder. Made what harder? Cole turned toward me, leaving without telling you. For once, there was nothing guarded in his expression. No one knew about the offer. He also knew something else. He told me that if I went to Alaska without being honest with you, I would spend 6 months regretting it. I remembered arriving at the cabin and learning Cole had canceled a paid job to come. That is why you are here. He nodded. The shoot I canceled was not the Alaska assignment. It was a weekend commercial job in Portland. I gave it to another photographer because I needed to be here. To tell me what? Cole gave a quiet, nervous laugh. You really are going to make me say every word. At this point, yes. He looked through the rain toward the dark trees, then back at me. Those photographs started almost 2 years ago. The first one was at Noah's birthday. You were laughing at something Jake said, and I took the picture without thinking much about it. Later, when I was editing everything, I kept going back to that image. Why? Because that was the day I realized I liked you. I forgot about the cold. Liked me. More than I should have if I planned to keep pretending we were just part of the same friend group. Cole smiled faintly. After that, I noticed you everywhere. Your coffee order. The books you carried on trips. The fact that you open windows even when everyone else thinks the room is freezing. The way you disappear into kitchens when you are nervous. I stared at him. Every detail I had spent the weekend questioning suddenly had an answer. Why did you never say anything? Because a few weeks after Noah's birthday, I heard you tell him you would never date anyone in the friend group. I remembered the conversation instantly. I had just ended a difficult relationship and wanted nothing complicated. Cole, that was almost 2 years ago. I know that now. You believed it for 2 years? You kept avoiding me. It seemed like confirmation. I almost laughed at how completely we had misunderstood each other. And the secret everyone knows? Cole took a breath. That I came here to tell you how I feel before I leave. The rain seemed louder around us. When are you leaving? 3 weeks. And you are still going? Yes. I nodded slowly. Strangely, that answer did not disappoint me. It made what he was saying feel more honest. He was not offering me a dramatic sacrifice. He was offering the truth. Cole held my gaze. Ethan, I have liked you for almost 2 years, and I did not want another 6 months to begin with you never knowing. Suddenly, the photographs, the coffee, the open window, and every strange glance from our friends fit together. The secret had finally been spoken. The only problem was that Cole still did not know mine. For several seconds, I could only stare at Cole while the rain filled the silence between us. He had spent almost 2 years believing I wanted nothing from him, while I had spent almost 2 years believing exactly the same thing about him. The absurdity finally caught up with me, and I laughed. Cole looked alarmed. That was not the reaction I expected. I am sorry. I covered my face for a moment. I am not laughing at you. I am laughing at us. That is not significantly better. Cole, I said I would never date anyone in our friend group because I had just ended a terrible relationship. I know that now. No, you do not understand. I lowered my hands and looked directly at him. A few months later, I changed my mind about one person. Cole became completely still. Who? I stared at him until recognition slowly replaced confusion. Oh, he said. Yes. Oh, you? Me? For how long? Probably 18 months. Cole blinked several times. You have liked me for 18 months? Approximately. I did not mark the date on a calendar. And you spent 18 months avoiding me? Because you became strangely formal every time we were alone. I thought you had figured out how I felt, and were trying to make sure I understood you were not interested. Cole leaned back against the railing and looked toward the ceiling. We are idiots. That is what I have been trying to tell you. He laughed, and the tension that had followed us through the entire weekend finally began to loosen. Then his expression changed. I am still going to Alaska. I know. 6 months is a long time. It is. I do not want to ask you to wait for something we have not even started. I appreciated that more than he probably realized. Then do not ask. Cole looked disappointed for half a second before I continued. Ask me what I want. He straightened. What do you want? I thought about it carefully. I want you to take the assignment. Ethan, you said this is work you have wanted for years. I am not going to become the reason you turn it down 3 minutes after finding out we like each other. That is extremely specific. I am a designer. Details matter. A smile returned to his face. What about us? We have phones, video calls, airplanes. 6 months is not permanent. You would actually try that? Would you? Cole answered without hesitation. Yes. The certainty in his voice warmed something in me that the cold mountain air could not touch. He moved closer, then stopped, leaving enough space for me to decide what happened next. Can I hold your hand? He asked. After everything, the question was so careful that I smiled. You remembered how I take my coffee for 2 years, but you have to ask that? I am trying communication. Apparently we need it. I held out my hand. Cole took it gently, his fingers warm around mine. There was nothing dramatic about the moment, and somehow that made it better. We stood beneath the covered deck listening to the rain, while 2 years of misunderstanding finally became something almost simple. Through the window, I noticed 4 figures attempting very badly not to watch us. Jake disappeared the second I looked toward him. Our friends are terrible spies, I said. Cole laughed. They mean well. They kept your secret for how long? No one knew first. Jake figured it out. Mason found out last month. And nobody thought to tell me. It was not theirs to tell. He was right. I squeezed his hand. Tomorrow we would leave the cabin. 3 weeks later, Cole would leave for Alaska. None of that had changed. Everything else had. For the first time all weekend, I was not wondering what secret everyone knew. I was wondering what Cole and I might become now that there were no secrets left between us. The next morning, the cabin felt exactly the same, but I did not. Rain had faded to a light mist, and pale sunlight filtered between the pines while 5 grown men attempted to clean a kitchen without agreeing on where anything belonged. Jake watched Cole and me with such obvious curiosity that I finally said, "If you have a question, ask it." Jake leaned against the counter. Did somebody finally say it? Noah nearly dropped the coffee mug. Mason turned away, clearly hiding a smile. Cole looked at me, and I looked at him. We had a conversation, I said. A conversation, Jake repeated. Very informative. That is all you are getting. Jake sighed dramatically. After everything I have endured. You endured breakfast and one hike. Emotionally, it was exhausting. Cole laughed and handed me a travel mug. I took one sip and looked at him. One splash of cream. No. Sugar. I had 2 years to memorize it. Jake pointed at us. That is exactly what I am talking about. By 10, we had packed the cars and checked every room twice. The forest smelled clean after the rain, and patches of blue were beginning to appear between the clouds. Mason locked the cabin while Noah and Jake argued about who had forgotten to take out the recycling. I was carrying my bag toward Mason's SUV when Cole called my name. Ride back with me? I stopped. Just us. His smile was small but unmistakable. That is the idea. I moved my bag to Cole's car. Nobody commented, although Jake gave me a look through the window that said more than words could have. Once we were on the highway toward Portland, the cabin disappeared behind the trees. For the first few miles, neither of us spoke. It was not awkward anymore. It felt like we were both adjusting to the strange relief of no longer pretending. 3 weeks, I said eventually. Cole nodded. 3 weeks. That gives you time to take me to dinner before Alaska. He glanced at me, surprised. I was going to ask. You spent almost 2 years waiting. I thought I would save us some time. I appreciate the efficiency. Thursday. A few miles later, Cole reached across the center console and rested his hand palm up between us. I looked at it, then at him. Are you asking permission again? Communication, he reminded me. Right. Our new strategy. I placed my hand in his. Outside, Mount Hood receded in the mirror while the road stretched toward Portland. What happens when you leave? I asked. We call. We figure out the time difference. I send you too many photographs. You already do that. Now I can send them directly to you, instead of keeping them in envelopes. I smiled. And when you come back? Cole was quiet for a moment. If this still feels right, I take you somewhere that is not a cabin full of witnesses. Good plan. And if 6 months changes things? I considered the question. Then we tell each other the truth instead of spending another 2 years guessing. Cole squeezed my hand. I can do that. So could I? 3 weeks later, I stood with Noah at Portland International Airport while Cole prepared to leave for Alaska. There were no dramatic promises and no requests for either of us to become someone different. Cole hugged me, then stepped back and smiled. 6 months. 6 months is not forever. Dinner when I get back? Just us. His eyes brightened because he remembered. That is the idea. I leaned forward and kissed him gently, briefly, without caring that Noah was probably pretending not to watch 20 feet away. When Cole finally walked toward security, I did not feel like I was losing him. For the first time since I had known him, distance did not feel like uncertainty. I knew where he was going. I knew why he was going. Most importantly, I knew how he felt. 5 friends had driven to a cabin carrying one secret. We came home without it, and somehow that changed everything. The first month without Cole taught me that distance could be both easier and harder than I expected. Easier because we had finally stopped guessing. Harder because after almost 2 years of wanting his attention, I suddenly had it every day from more than 1,000 miles away. His first message usually arrived before I finished breakfast. Sometimes it was a photograph of mountains under a pale morning sky. Sometimes it was a quiet street in a small Alaskan town, or a cup of terrible hotel coffee with the message, "You would hate this." I sent him pieces of Portland in return, my desk buried under design drafts, the food cart where Noah insisted we eat every Friday, Jake wearing sunglasses during 3 straight days of rain. We video called whenever his schedule allowed. Some nights we talked for an hour. Other nights, he had 10 minutes before leaving for an early assignment. We learned quickly that romance across distance was less about dramatic declarations and more about showing up consistently. Then, 7 weeks after he left, Cole missed our Sunday call. I told myself it meant nothing. His work often took him into areas with unreliable service. Monday passed without a message. By Tuesday morning, I had checked my phone enough times to annoy myself. Noah noticed when we met for coffee. "You are doing the thing," he said. "What thing?" "Inventing explanations because you do not have information." "I am not inventing anything." Noah gave me a look. "You spent 2 years doing exactly that with Cole." Unfortunately, best friends become unbearable when they are correct. That evening, my phone finally rang. Cole appeared on the screen looking exhausted, but fine. Relief arrived before irritation. "There you are," I said. I am sorry. What happened? We moved farther north for several days. Almost no signal. I thought I told you. You said you might have limited service. I did not realize limited meant disappearing. Cole went quiet. You are right. I expected an explanation. Instead, he said, I should have been clearer. The simplicity of it stopped me. Old Ethan would have said everything was fine and quietly worried for another week. I had promised myself not to do that anymore. I do not need constant updates, I said. But if you know you will be unreachable for several days, tell me before you disappear. I can do that. And if you cannot, I tell you as soon as I can. I nodded. Okay. Cole smiled tiredly. Look at us communicating like functional adults. Do not celebrate yet. We have only been doing this for 7 weeks. Fair. He shifted the phone, and behind him I could see a small window filled with late evening light. Ethan, there is something else. My stomach tightened automatically. That sentence has a terrible history. This one is not terrible. He hesitated. The organization asked whether I would consider extending the assignment. I stared at him. How long? Another 3 months. The original 6 months had already felt enormous. 9 sounded different. He watched my face carefully. I have not answered them. Do you want to stay? Professionally? Yes. Then why have you not answered? Cole looked directly into the camera. Because now my decisions affect more than just me. I understood what he was offering me. Not permission to control his future, but a place inside the conversation. That mattered. Do not turn it down because you think I need you back on the original date. What if I want to come back? Then come back because that is what you want. He smiled. You make this difficult. I am trying to make it honest. We talked another 20 minutes before his connection began breaking up. After the call ended, I sat alone in my apartment looking at the last photograph he had sent, a quiet shoreline beneath an enormous gray sky. 6 months had once seemed like the challenge. Now it might become 9. For the first time, though, uncertainty did not automatically feel like rejection. Cole had included me before making his decision. Whatever happened next, neither of us was standing outside the other's life anymore. 3 days later, Cole called while I was finishing dinner, and I knew from his expression that he had made a decision. I turned down the extension, he said. I set my fork down. Because of me? No. His answer came immediately, and I need you to believe that. I waited. The additional 3 months would have been good experience, he continued, but it would also mean missing another project in Oregon that I have wanted for a long time. I spent 2 days asking myself what I would choose if you were not part of the equation. And I would come home. Something in my chest relaxed. Then I support your decision. Cole smiled. That sounded extremely official. I can prepare a presentation if you prefer. Please do not. The remaining months developed a rhythm. Cole sent photographs. I sent voice messages during my morning commute. We learned when to talk and when to let each other have an ordinary day without turning distance into a test. There were frustrating weeks when his schedule changed unexpectedly, and there were nights when my design deadlines left me too tired for a long conversation. The difference was that neither of us treated silence as evidence anymore. If I was busy, I told him. If Cole was traveling somewhere without reliable service, he told me. It sounded almost embarrassingly simple, considering how long we had spent doing the opposite. For months after he left, Mason invited everyone over for dinner. Jake brought up the cabin before we had even finished eating. We should go back next year, he said. Absolutely not, I replied. Why? Because I am never sharing a vacation with 4 people who know my personal life before I do. Noah laughed. To be fair, you were exceptionally slow. You watched me spend an entire weekend investigating my own friends. We were protecting Cole's confidence. Jake nearly revealed everything 6 times. Jake pointed at himself proudly. Only 5. Later that night, Cole called while the 4 of us were still sitting around Mason's table. Jake immediately leaned into view. When are you coming back? Ethan is becoming unbearable. I am sitting right here, I said. Cole laughed. 8 weeks. Hearing the number surprised me. 8 weeks no longer sounded endless. After everyone said hello, I stepped onto Mason's balcony so Cole and I could talk privately. I have something for you, he said. Should I be concerned? Probably not. He turned his camera toward the wall of his temporary room. Photographs covered a section above his desk. Mountains, small towns, frozen lakes, co-workers, roadside diners, morning skies. In the center was one photograph I recognized immediately. Me outside the coffee shop in Portland, laughing at something beyond the frame. You brought that one? I asked. It was in my camera bag when I left. Of course it was. Cole smiled. It reminds me what I am coming back to. The words were simple, but they stayed with me long after the call ended. 2 months later, I stood at Portland International Airport holding 2 coffees while Noah waited several yards away because, according to him, somebody responsible needed to make sure I did not forget where we parked. When Cole finally appeared with his camera bag over one shoulder and a suitcase rolling behind him, he spotted me almost immediately. For one strange second, neither of us moved. 9 months earlier, I would have wondered what his expression meant. Now I knew. I walked toward him. Cole dropped the handle of his suitcase and opened his arms. I stepped into the hug without hesitation. You came back? I said. I said I would. When we separated, I handed him his coffee. He took a sip and smiled. You remembered. I had 6 months to memorize it. Cole laughed, and then his expression softened. Dinner. Just us. Definitely just us. As we walked toward the parking garage, our shoulders brushing occasionally, I realized the cabin had not given us a perfect relationship. It had given us something better, the chance to stop assuming and start choosing. Cole had gone away because his life mattered. He had come home because this mattered too. And this time, neither of us needed anyone else to explain what was happening between us. Having Cole back in Portland felt strangely more intimidating than missing him. Distance had given us structure. We had scheduled calls, photographs, messages, and a clear date on the calendar when he would return. Now he was 20 minutes away, and for the first time we had to discover what being together looked like in ordinary life. Our first real dinner happened at a small neighborhood restaurant in southeast Portland. Cole arrived 5 minutes early. I arrived 10 minutes early and spent those extra minutes pretending I had not. When he walked in wearing a dark jacket and carrying the same calm smile I had spent 6 months seeing through a screen, I realized something immediately. You look different in person, I said after he sat down. Cole raised an eyebrow. I was gone 6 months, not 6 years. I know. You just seem more real. That might be the nicest possible way to tell someone video calls are terrible. I laughed, and the nervousness disappeared. Dinner lasted almost 3 hours. We talked about Alaska, my work, our friends, and all the ordinary things that had somehow become important because we could finally discuss them across the same table. Afterward, Cole walked with me through the cool evening streets. When we reached my apartment building, neither of us seemed ready to say goodnight. Coffee tomorrow, he asked. You just got back. Exactly. I have 6 months of coffee to catch up on. That sounds medically questionable. Saturday morning, then? Saturday morning. The weeks that followed were quieter than the cabin and less dramatic than Alaska, but they mattered more. Cole learned that I needed an hour alone after difficult work days before I wanted company. I learned that he became restless if he went too long without taking photographs simply for himself. We disagreed over restaurants, movies, and whether a weekend should begin with sleeping late or getting outside before 8 in the morning. None of those disagreements became evidence that something was wrong. We simply talked. One Friday evening, about 2 months after his return, Cole invited me to his apartment. A large archival box sat on the dining table. What is that? I asked. Something I should probably have shown you earlier. Inside were prints from Alaska. Dozens of them. Snow-covered mountains, fishing towns, weathered docks, wide gray skies, quiet roads, and faces filled with ordinary life. Near the bottom was a photograph of an empty chair beside a window overlooking a frozen shoreline. Why this one? I asked. Cole stood beside me. That was where I usually called you. I looked closer. A coffee mug sat on the table beside the chair. You photographed an empty chair? It was not about the chair. What was it about? He smiled. Missing someone without being afraid that missing them meant losing them. I looked at him, and suddenly the photograph felt more intimate than any of the old pictures he had taken of me. You should include this one if you ever exhibit the Alaska work. I was thinking about it. What would you call it? Cole considered the question. Something simple. Maybe home is somewhere else. That is surprisingly sentimental for you. You have been a bad influence. I slipped my hand into his. I can live with that. Cole looked down at our hands, then back at me. There is something else I have been thinking about. I waited, remembering how frightening that sentence once would have been. Next spring, I want to take another trip, he said. Not for work. Maybe the Oregon coast. A few days. With the guys? No. His smile widened. Just us. I understood what he was really asking. Not whether I could survive another separation, but whether we were ready to start creating memories that belonged only to us. I would like that. Cole squeezed my hand. For 2 years, we had collected moments without understanding what they meant. Now we were finally building them. Deliberately, one ordinary day at a time. By the following spring, Cole and I had become good at something neither of us had understood when we first met, saying what we meant before silence had a chance to invent another story. Our trip to the Oregon coast began on a cool Friday morning. With 2 coffees in the cup holders, Cole's camera equipment in the back, and a weekend bag that I had somehow packed as if we were leaving for 2 weeks. You brought 3 jackets, Cole said as we drove west from Portland. The coast has weather. Every place has weather. The Oregon coast has opinions. He laughed, and I watched the city disappear behind us. There was something almost unbelievable about how ordinary happiness could feel after spending so long making everything complicated. We stopped at viewpoints, walked along a quiet beach, ate clam chowder at a small restaurant, and argued about whether Cole needed another photograph of waves. He insisted every wave was different. I reminded him that he had once kept more than 20 photographs of the same graphic designer. He said that proved consistency, not obsession. On Saturday evening, we sat outside our rental cottage wrapped in jackets while the sky turned orange over the Pacific. Cole had left his camera inside. I noticed because he almost never did that. No photographs. I asked. Not tonight. Are you feeling all right? I want to remember this without looking through a lens. I smiled. That is suspiciously profound. I spent 6 months photographing places people travel thousands of miles to see, and I learned something. What? Cole looked at me. A beautiful place is still just a place if you have nobody you want to tell about it. I leaned back in my chair. Alaska made you sentimental. You made me sentimental. We sat quietly as the last light faded. Eventually, Cole reached for my hand. He no longer asked every time, but somehow the gesture still carried the same care as the first time on that cabin deck. Do you ever think about that weekend? He asked. The cabin? Yes. Every time Jake claims he can keep a secret. Cole laughed. I almost did not tell you. I know. I had an entire speech planned. Really? It was terrible. Now I need to hear it. Absolutely not. I smiled, then became serious. I am glad you came. Cole squeezed my hand. So am I. The next month, Mason organized dinner for all 5 of us. Jake immediately proposed another cabin trip. Noah groaned. I looked at Cole. What do you think? Separate bedrooms this time? Definitely. Jake stared at us. You 2 are no fun anymore. We are extremely fun, I said. We just prefer vacations without organized emotional conspiracies. Mason raised his glass. To communication. Noah joined him. To finally figuring out what everyone else already knew. Cole looked at me across the table, smiling. A year earlier, that expression would have sent me into hours of analysis. Now I simply understood it. Later, walking home together through a light Portland rain, Cole stopped outside the coffee shop from one of those old photographs. He pulled out his phone and showed me the picture again. There I was, laughing without knowing he had already begun falling for me. You know what is strange? He asked. What? I used to think this was my favorite photograph of you. Used to. Cole opened another image. It was from our coast trip. I was sitting outside the cottage at sunset, looking toward the ocean. I thought you left your camera inside. I used my phone. That feels like cheating. Look at the difference. I did. In the old photograph, Cole had been watching me from a distance, carrying feelings he was afraid to name. In the new one, I knew exactly who was behind the camera and exactly how he felt. I looked at him. Keep both. Why? Because one shows where we started. The other shows where we ended up. Cole smiled and slipped his phone into his pocket. Then we continued walking home together. The cabin had not changed everything because it gave us a perfect weekend. It changed everything because one secret finally became a conversation. After that, we stopped waiting for other people to read our minds, stopped treating uncertainty like an answer, and started choosing each other in ways both ordinary and deliberate. For almost 2 years, we had stood inside the same story, without realizing it. Now, finally, we were writing the rest of it together.